Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Saucy Marriage Weekend, and I have another expert segment for you. And this is another saucy one because that's what we're doing here. We want to make sure that we're elevating our marriages in all of the aspects that are important. We're talking parenting, we're talking sex, we're talking communication, and then some. And we cannot leave out money. I put on green today in in honor of our topic, and I have an amazing guest with me who is just not playing in the game of finances, is going to give us the real, and we're going to talk about it. Michael Watson, I'm super excited to have you here at the Saucy Marriage Weekend, brother.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yes, absolutely. Anything I know you own it and you serious about your stuff, so anything you want to add to your intro before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So two things. First, if you look in the background, you see the Batman pictures. That's because I'm the Black Bruce Wayne. So I'm gonna make sure that I teach everybody how to become millionaires and billionaires one of these days. And
Yes.
two, I would like to state my mission statement, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. Please.
So my mission is to be a financial educator. I want to create financial independence through expert guidance and accountability. I want to change the narrative around wealth accumulation, particularly Black wealth, and help 1,000 families achieve a seven-figure net worth and generational wealth.
I love that mission. And I love that you said change the narrative. Because
Absolutely.
some folks in this, I've known them for a while. You and I are just getting to know each other, but you got the reason we were here. You got the vision. And I'm the same way. I'm here to change the negative narrative of failure around marriage just because we have tough seasons or challenging moments or times to one of freedom and growth because that's what it is. And so we out here changing narratives. I'm here for that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we're talking money. And before people can wrap their heads around a lot of times dealing with six figure, seven figure, eight figure net worth and earnings, they're often I'll often hear couples talk about where they are currently. And so before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about our dynamics. Like what's your dynamic in your household? You are a finance man. So how do things get done around just day-to-day finances in your house?
If I'm being honest with you, um, in most households, the women are the head of the finances because they pay more attention to it on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing in my household,
Mhm.
right? So my wife is definitely in charge of all the finances, making sure that we're not purchasing things that do not need to be purchased. But when it comes to actually putting together the long-term vision and goal for what we
Mhm.
want our lives to be 20 and 30 years from now, and then also making sure that we have the right policies and vehicles in place, that's where I take the reins just because of my financial expertise and my background.
Right. I think that's an
Mhm.
important thing to note for people that depending on the dynamic in your household, you both don't have to do the same thing, but you play to the strengths that you have. In my household, it's actually the opposite, right? I'm more of the big vision person. Now we do that together, but in terms of like looking at bigger vision in terms of just money mindset stuff because of a lot of work that I personally had to do on myself around my
Mhm.
conditioning when it came to money and money mindset. My husband is really meticulous with the day to day and things that are coming in and out and what's happening now. I do make sure we don't crazy get spending. Hold on, where that came from? But
Right,
we have
right,
our
right, right.
strengths, you know. So for those of you who are listening, really tapping into what your strengths are, what your spouse's strengths are, is going to be really key in terms of how the dynamic is in your own household. Yes, that's awesome. And you know, what when I talked about this originally, we talked about the wealth building. We hear a lot about that, and all of us want our ears perk when we think about what we can do to make more money and to be millionaires and to leave a legacy for our families and our children. But a lot of folks are either on the struggle bus or they're trying to go from from paycheck to paycheck to now we are okay. They're trying to figure out if they should pay their bills, all of these bills, or they're going to have to clear out debt. And so if somebody is dealing in a state of struggle with their money and it's hard for them to wrap their head around a millionaire mindset, what do you usually tell them?
Well, it's a couple of different ways that you know we can go in that situation. So first and foremost, every situation for every person is going to be different,
Right.
right? So we have to understand the dynamic of why they're in the position that they're in right now. And what I mean by that is it can be some decisions that they made in the past that caused them to rack up an exponential amount of debt that they're having a hard time getting themselves out of.
Mhm.
Uh, Another situation can be where, take 2020 for example, where a lot of people were laid off, and so now whenever we get stimulus packages, what decisions are we going to make with those dollars? Are we going to make the right decision to either pay down debt or get our bills paid up, right?
Right.
Um, and so we have to take each case step by step and person by person to
Mhm.
identify what is the most important either bill or object of debt or even saving.
Yeah.
What comes first, right? But definitely I would say if your lights are about to get cut off, you should probably be paying that light bill. You shouldn't be taking that stimulus check and going out to the mall or doing anything with it. But
Right.
I encourage my clients to, spend wisely and also to have a monthly budget spreadsheet prepared.
Yeah.
Because one thing a monthly budget spreadsheet does is it helps us to know where our money is going instead of wondering where our money went,
Yeah.
right? So financial awareness around your dollars that's coming in and going out is very, very important
Right.
because, like you said earlier, you don't want to get in a situation where it's like, well, no, we're not spending no money there, or where did this money go? But unfortunately, we live in a world of plastic,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is, okay, here's my debit card, here's my credit card, swipe, right? So if there's something that I want, swipe. Something else that I want, swipe. I know I got the money in the bank, and
Yeah.
so let me go ahead and do that. And even if I don't have the money in the bank, there's a little thing called an overdraft. And a lot of the times, banks will still let me purchase something, but now I got a $35 overdraft fee that I'm okay with that. But you shouldn't be,
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
so that's a mentality. That's a
Mhm.
mentality. I worked at the bank for a number of years.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I seen working at the bank far too often was that people that look like me and you walk into the bank after getting out of their luxury vehicles with
Mm.
their fancy clothes on from Neiman Marcus or whatever, and they're complaining about overdraft fees,
Mm.
right? And so what's happening is the bank is encouraging you to draft more and more money. They can easily put a stop to that,
Right.
but what's happening is they're charging you $35 for that overdraft fee, and then after you get that overdraft fee, if it's delinquent for too long, they're charging you even more money for that,
Yeah. They're a
right? So
business.
that's
Yeah.
it's a business.
Yeah.
And so that's the debit card swipe issue that a lot of Americans are going through right now. And
Right.
then we have the credit card swipe issue,
Hmm.
right? So we have X amount of dollars in credit that we're able to use, whether it's through a bank card, a Macy's card, a Kohl's card, whatever department store you go to. Oh,
Right.
here's an additional 25% off if you open up this credit card today, right? So let me go ahead and swipe because I want the clothes now, and I'll pay for it later.
Right.
But psychologically, what we have to start understanding is that we're financing clothes now.
Mhm.
Okay. So not only are we spending top dollar for clothes, we're also paying interest on those clothes on top of that every single month.
Right.
And so what we're doing is we're funding other people's retirements, and we're giving them money to pay down their debts, pay their bills, and fund their savings accounts and retirement accounts, and we're taking that money out of our pockets to help us fund our long-term visions.
Right. And I think what you're speaking to is so important to our mindset, right? Like I said before, real talk, I've had to do a lot of work and continue to on money mindset, on, what the value of money is. And for a lot of couples, it's security. I mean, it really boils down to that. It's security for a lot of women that I talk to. For men, it's the security of being able to provide and what that looks like for them. And when our security is challenged in any way, it causes friction. It causes issues internally and a lot of times with our spouses. And so you said so much. I want to bring it back to the first foundational thing that you said about budgeting, because I hear this a lot, like in terms of just breaking that down for folk around, like, well, I budget, but my spouse doesn't. And then I start to budget and it gets away from me. And, what are the ways in which you can make it as simple as you can to say, okay, we're going to start really keeping track of this?
Um, First, having a budget worksheet. You can Google it. It's very, very easy. It gives you your income and then it lists out all your expenses, your rent or mortgage, whichever one you have, utilities, cell phone, etc.
Right.
Write all that down. Right. So it's important to understand what our fixed expenses are. So fixed expenses are dollars that have to be spent on monthly bills.
Right.
So, we have to have them. We have to pay our rent, our mortgage. We
Right.
have to pay our car note. We have to pay our insurance. Right. Everything else are disposable expenses.
Yeah.
So groceries, gas, personal spending, eating out, gym memberships, subscriptions, all those are optional and they are not needed to live your life.
Right.
Sorry, groceries are. Groceries are.
Don't eat.
Sorry. Yeah, but before anybody try to get me on that, those are. But the amount that you spend on groceries and the amount that you spend on eating out,
Yeah.
that's scalable,
It varies.
right? So,
Yeah. Yep.
you can coupon. You can go to Aldi.
Yeah.
You can instead of buying 3 boxes of cereal, you can buy two,
Mhm.
right? You don't always need that variety.
Yeah.
So a lot of that comes with really having that awareness around how much is going on. And that starts with creating the budget,
Yeah.
and then the second part to bring awareness is something an exercise that I have a lot of my clients do is I have them go through open up your banking app. Everybody has a banking app on their phone nowadays.
Mhm.
Okay. Go to the last month. So this is March 2nd. February just ended. So
Mhm.
go through your February transactions, write down everything you spent money on that was not a fixed expense. So I'm not
Mhm.
talking about mortgage or rent. I'm not talking about car note. I'm not talking about insurance.
Entertainment. Right.
Yeah, I'm talking about eating out. I'm talking about groceries. I'm talking about entertainment, personal spending,
Gas.
all those things, right? So, and let's find out how much we're spending on that. And 99% of the people who I have do this exercise are
Shocked.
like, wow,
Yes.
but I can't believe I spent that much money at Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
I can't believe I spent that much money at Starbucks.
Yep.
You'll be surprised.
Oh, I've been there. I've been surprised. Like, oh, but right. I'm taking it, and and I want to add the communication piece to this from my perspective, right? Because what you're saying requires a conversation. It requires intentionally sitting down with your spouse and saying, okay, let's look at what we got. And it also requires you to look at, again, whose strength is this without resentment? Because sometimes the one who's more meticulous, it's like, well, I have to do the budget and do the numbering and stuff like that. And you just sitting here because that's your strength. And you haven't yet acknowledged what your spouse's strength is when it comes to the finances in the household. But this requires a conversation. So all the things you're saying, you have to intentionally sit down, have the conversation, look at the numbers, and we're always on our phones. I have a registry app, right? My husband has the same one. So we're able to, anytime you go someplace, whether you did swipe, whatever, we put it down so that we also have it in the registry app, and that happens immediately. And then you can have like a Dropbox or a Drive share where you can share your bigger spreadsheet around your monthly budget and set aside that time, be at the end of the month or the beginning of the next whatever, where once a month we know this is our time, so there's not daunting and it's coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you got to be
Absolutely.
intentional to even have those conversations that you're talking about that are so important to even start to figure out what's happening with our money, what's going where. So when these people are shocked after the shock wears off, what happens, Michael?
I need to get a budget.
Then they're inspired, they're motivated. That's
It
good.
is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's good. And so then they'll start the budget process. And you know I think what you said before, I think was really key. I don't want to gloss over it about what's essential and non-essential. So then the trimming happens. Helping people with the, do we really need this conversation? What do we really value conversation? You know, and I think that brings us to maybe the bigger piece from budgeting to kind of those financial goal settings. So what's your take on that?
You hit the nail right on the head. So once we start to budget, what's happening internally and psychologically is our mindset is slowly starting to shift.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're like, oh man, I'm not going to get the extra guacamole at Chipotle. Or
I'm so mad they charge for that though. Like, come on. But
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Or like say you like to go to Moe's, I'm not gonna get double meat, right? Because you don't need it, you just want it.
Right.
And so then what we do is psychologically is we start to manipulate our mindsets into only taking care of our needs, as opposed to pouring in so much to our wants.
Right.
And when we're at Macy's and they say, well, you can save an extra 20% if you open up a Macy's card right now, the answer is no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Oh
The
man.
answer starts to become no. And so as we start to look at our budget 3 months from now, we see that we have more money.
Yeah.
And now that we have more money, now we can use those extra dollars that we've just discovered to pay down that debt,
Mhm.
right? Now we have those extra dollars to start building up that emergency fund that we need for 6 months. But most importantly, we start having these extra dollars to build wealth,
Right.
because overall, that's the goal. We want to be in a position to where we can build wealth long term.
Yeah.
And the only way for us to build wealth is for us to save more money than we spend.
Mhm. That's in and I feel like what you said is so key, and it can be controversial, right? It's the real, like how much you keep is important because they're broke and broke mindset millionaires, because of how they're spending their money, and they're not keeping as much as they need to keep for whatever their reason. They're not dealing with their money well. And because I know we're about to get into the wealth aspect, which is really going to get big for us, but one, I just want to speak to the whole say no thing because I was at a particular store, okay, a famous one, and this man went real hard. Like, you could say this and this. Well, I don't understand why you're not going to get this card. I said, I don't want another credit card, sir. He said, but you can say, I use this credit card. I mean, he went for 5 minutes, and I had to say no 5 times. But if I was tired, sometimes people try to beat you down. Don't let them. Okay, if you say no, continue to say no because you know what you want. And I think that's really key about what you said is like, okay, now that we see what's possible, we can do different things with our money, but it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be daunting. And you also said over 3 months. So the expectation that you're going to see this right away if you're in a space of struggle is not real. So give yourself some grace, give your spouse some grace around how you guys are growing your money, how you guys are talking about money, the shifts and changes you see in your money. It has to be over time. This was for me and my husband, it was over time. We've had struggle bus moments. I've talked to folks about this before. Those of you who may have been connected with me in different ways, I've talked about that and I've shared that. So yeah, we've definitely got to be in that space of, okay, we're going to give this the time and the grace to actually happen. We're just going to be consistent with what it is that we're doing. And
Yeah, wealth is a marathon, not a sprint.
not a sprint.
And to kind of piggyback off of two things you said, so those people that are trying to get you those credit cards, they're doing that for them, not you.
Yeah.
Okay, so they are incentivized for opening up X amount of credit cards. I
Mhm.
know this from experience in working at the bank. I was incentivized for getting people to open credit cards, right? And that's not right,
Right.
to help people get in debt. Once I finally realized that, I'm like, I'm out of here. I can't do this, right? I
Mhm.
wasn't that it didn't sit right in my soul. So
Yeah.
now I strategically help people get out of that debt,
Yeah.
right? And then two, you mentioned something about a millionaire with a broke mindset. So we like to call that the poor man's consciousness.
Mm.
There's a great book written by Dennis Kimball. What's the name of it? The name escapes me right now. Um, but it's about building wealth, the Black Code. Man, I gotta find the name of this book
We're gonna
before we
put
get
it
off.
when we put this segment up,
Yeah,
we gonna have it on
yeah,
there. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. And so 95% of lotto winners go bankrupt.
Yep. I'm not surprised.
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
you give somebody that it's like you have to prepare the perspective first and then the actions come. It needs to happen. It can happen simultaneously, but by simultaneously I mean the mindset shift happens and then the action maybe shortly follows. But I know that's for me, and that's why I say the first thing that I have had to do was money mindset work. And I remember, and I'm going to say this because I know you know this term, I remember them drilling in when I was kind of working with different things. Pay yourself first. And when you're struggling, you're like, I gotta pay these bills first. I gotta pay this. And the idea and the concept of paying yourself first seemed like, no, I have to wait. After all this is done, I'll see what's left. And then that's for me. And that was one of the biggest shifts for me because I don't care if it's $1.50 or $5. The first of it will go to me, to us,
That's
to our
right.
household. It wasn't the
That's right.
amount, it was the concept.
Right.
So go ahead, go
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ahead.
So that is what you're doing is you're training your mindset,
Right.
right? And so the only way that we do anything in life is that we practice and we train. You didn't just get behind the car and start driving, right? You had to do driver's ed. You had to train. You had to learn, what to do at a four-way stop sign.
Yeah.
Same thing with our money. And the name of that book is Think and Grow Rich,
That's what I
Black.
knew that.
Yeah, Think and
Even
Grow
me, yeah.
Rich, Black Code, right? And then also to piggyback off of the paying yourself first, Robert Kiyosaki talks about that in Rich Dad Poor Dad.
That was the
So
first book I read with my husband when we were first dating. This is like
yeah, yeah,
memories. It was the first book
uh,
we read together about money.
yeah,
And we were in our early 20s at the time. So we had started. I mean, we still made a lot of mistakes, but we started.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you learn from your mistakes, that's the most important part.
Right. Well, what speaking of that, what did for you, because you coming in, people like, yes, we know you're an expert financier, but all the folks that I know that are in finance had to come through their own journey, had to switch for themselves and their mindset. Now, mine was the biggest thing was pay yourself first, one of the first things in that concept switch. And of course, reading that book back in the day. What was your shift?
For me, it was so I made a lot of mistakes over the years. I was one of the guys that because we made good money, man. We made back before I was an advisor. I was in sales with Verizon Wireless.
Mhm.
I was one of the guys you walk in and you buy a cell phone from me. And so I was also one of the guys that go to the bar and buy shots for everybody, right?
Nice. That guy.
Uh, yeah, I was that guy. Stupid. I'm not, well, I'm sorry. That's not stupid. I mean, I don't want to call anybody stupid or anything like that. But for me,
Yeah.
looking back at it as an adult, as a little bit older now, that was not the best thing that I should have been doing. Um, I guess the shift came from me when I actually started working at the bank, and I started to
Mm.
see how many people came in with the overdraft fees, with the negative accounts, etc. And then I seen other cultures who literally had everything right.
Yeah.
And so then I just started to just question, okay, like, what are you guys doing? What's different? Like, how are you doing this? And so then they started teaching me, and
Mm.
I listened. And so then I started to implement a lot of the things that they were doing, And now, fast forward some years later, waking up, not having to worry about money
Mm,
is a great feeling.
yeah.
Waking up, knowing that you have money growing and different asset appreciating vehicles every single day
Right.
is a great feeling, right?
Mhm.
So one of the questions that I like to ask my clients is, what's your opinion of financial security?
Mhm.
And I like to ask that question because it's a subjective question. It can mean different things to different people. Before I say what it means to me, think about that for a second. Everybody who's watching this, what is your opinion of financial security?
Right.
Okay, give you a second to think about it. Okay, boom. So for me, financial security comes with having an income that you cannot outlive.
Mm,
Financial security comes with having an income you cannot outlive.
yeah.
And ultimately, that's what we want.
Mm. And that, my word often is freedom, and I hear that a lot from folks that I talk to, couples that I work with. What do you want overall? And this includes finances, and it's like, well, I want to feel free. I want freedom. And then you have to ask some of the similar question of, what does freedom then mean to you? What does it mean for you to be free? What does that look like? And it doesn't look the same for everybody, just because we all might have said the same word. And so a lot of it is definitely attached to finances, and you might not, you and we're going to talk about this, but you might not want to be, maybe a millionaire is not your aspiration. Maybe you have different aspirations, different goals, and that's fine. But at least define that for yourself and with your spouse, so that you feel like you guys are moving towards something together, even as you have individual goals, which is also okay. Marriage is two individuals. 1 + 1 = 2. You're not one person, but you do need to navigate and work together. So that just makes me think about really diving into what really want your life to look like, especially when you're partnered. Like, you made that shift. I don't know if you were married when you were working at the bank, but then you got married at some point, or you were married, and how did you make that shift with your partner, with your wife?
How did I make the shift financially, or
Yeah,
what
like
were you
in your
asking?
mindset, did you guys grow together? Were you already on the same page? Was she on this page and you were trying to come up to that page and you guys worked
Yeah,
together?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, she was blessed to have a mother who educated her, a lot when she was coming up. Susie Orman, she watched a lot of books and
Mm,
uh, importance of paying yourself first. And so I actually married into that, and she's been
mm,
one of my greatest inspirations, and for what I do today.
mm,
I really learned a lot from her, um, when it came to just being disciplined about your finances.
right. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. And just from, hopefully those of you are listening, because I've learned from my husband and he'll say he learned from me, and that in our differences, because we tend to be like, well, I do this and you ain't, why you not here? Why are you not in this space? Because we're all evolving at our own pace. We have to give each other space to do that. But what can you learn from each other? And there's always something. I'm like, I can't learn nothing from you. That's not true. Let's just operate from the fact that you can, and you just have to discover what that is. So I think that's beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
Yes. So we've budgeted. Well, not before we budgeted, we gotta where our money is and where it is
Mhm.
not and where it is going. We've
Mhm.
decided that, oh snap, we need to get a budget. So we're budgeting, we're being more diligent about our money and how we're spending it. Maybe we're trimming some fat off of some things that we don't need, that are not necessary. Then we are able to see exponential growth in our money if we're being consistent. And now we're in a space now, because we gotta go in some order. Don't invest all your money and you can't pay your bills, right? We gotta go in the order.
Exactly.
But now we're in a space where you're we are ready to open our minds up to wealth building, to invest. Like, what does that look like for a couple that's now in that space?
Okay. So, again, this it all depends on the individual,
Yeah.
right? It depends on your situation, etc. So now you want to start looking at some long-term wealth building vehicles for retirement, first and foremost. So I can't get into too many specifics, but I will give you a generalization. Like start looking at vehicles such as IRAs, individual retirement accounts. You have two different types of IRAs. You have a traditional IRA,
The
which
Roth.
is and a Roth IRA, right? So
Hmm.
you have those two. Um, they behave differently as far as taxes. If you have a 401k and you have a company match with your 401k, so you definitely want to take advantage of that because at the end of the day, what you're receiving is free money.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So if I'm putting $100 and the company is matching $100, I now have $200,
Right.
right? You and then of course looking into the market, which all these accounts that I just named, they are invested in the stock market, by the way.
Right.
Um,
Can you
but the
pause
most,
right there, Michael? Because
yeah,
I don't know if some people may not get that. Because when we talk about investments and investing our money, a lot of times people automatically think we're talking about stocks or bonds or things like that. But a lot of times, 401ks, IRAs, etc., those are your first investments, and people may not think of them that way. So you
mhm,
just said it. You know that they're. So I want. Can you bridge that gap for some people who
sure,
aren't thinking about that?
sure, absolutely. So you have a 401k. A lot of people know about 401ks. They are employer sponsored retirement plans from the private sector of corporations. And then you have 403bs, which behave in the same manner as a 401k, but they're for public companies, hospitals, nurses. They have for a lot of them, they have 403bs. That's just a private hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers savings retirement plans, 457s, all these things, they're all retirement accounts that behave the same way as far as a tax code. But what's the most important piece is that they're all invested in the stock market.
Right.
So a lot of the times, the company that you work for, they're going to pick what you can invest in as far as the portfolios, and then when you're putting that money away long term, it's being invested in the stock market.
Right.
Okay. As the stock market goes up, goes down, so do those accounts. But the most important thing to always remember, guys, is that even though the stock market is a roller coaster, ultimately it's always going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always going up. If you just look at it historically,
Right.
you're going to have times where it goes down and has some dips, but historically it always goes up. So it's very important for us to always remember that that 401k is not something that we want to take money from unless it's in a dire emergency.
Right.
Right.
Taxes
We
are
want to leave
crazy.
that money. The taxes are crazy. We want to
Yes.
leave that money in there for an extended period of time so that we can let it grow and we can let compound interest do its thing.
Right.
That's the most important part. You can let it grow and let compound interest do its thing. Because if we take it out before the age of 59 and a half, what's going to happen is you're going to be hit with not only a 10% penalty, but you're going to have to pay the whatever your tax code is, whatever your tax rate is at that time. You're going to have to pay that. And then at the end of the year, when you're ready to do your taxes, that's considered income. And so you have to pay taxes on it again for that. Yeah.
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 That double
Yeah.
tax will hit you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's an important distinction because some people may feel like for whatever reason, maybe not now because we're in the midst of a pandemic and everybody and their mama's like, well, I'm gonna at least look at something to invest in some stocks or something. It's the mindset around that has changed a little bit, and I think the fear around it or the apprehension has changed a little bit. But even if you're not doing that, I think that's really important to know that with your job or with an IRA or a Roth IRA that you've set up, you are still in in the investment arena. With
Mhm.
that said, I want to tackle one of the kind of, I guess, great debates, and sometimes even within the couple is, should we invest our money or should we save our money? Like I've been taught to save it, save it, save it, put it stuff in a mattress, whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And the investment part of it, whatever that looks like, feels like I could lose my money and that doesn't feel comfortable to me. So what say you?
So first off is we have to develop the and mindset and not the or mindset. So you
Yeah.
said should I save or invest. Okay. So that's something that's been plaguing the black society for a long time is we
Yeah.
think that we can only do one or the other.
Right.
And that's just not the case when other cultures are doing both and even and much more.
Yeah.
Right. So when we take a look at for first and foremost, you should have 6 months of expenses saved
Right.
your savings account. That's going to be your emergency fund. So the reason why that is because banks historically give terrible interest rates,
They used
right?
to give decent ones, but it's awful. It's awful now. It's a joke.
So typically the interest rate from a bank is less than 1%.
Yep.
At the banks that the bank I used to work at, it was 0.01%.
Mm.
And do you know how banks make money?
You asking me? Or you asking people? Oh, you asking me?
Well, I was asking you, but don't answer. That
No,
one's
no,
for the people.
no.
Just
Yeah.
think about it, people.
Well, you talked one way about them making money on an overdraft, but they make money a lot of times when you pay interest on loans and things that you have as well. You're paying off the principal, but they're getting that interest. You think you're spending this amount for a car or something, but they end up getting, you know, double. You end up paying double at the end of the day because you're making these payments. And yeah, so that's mine. But go ahead.
Yeah, so you hit the nail right on the head. It's from interest.
Yeah.
So what happens is if say if you had $20,000, you put $20,000 in the bank is going to give you, for instance, with most banks, most domestic banks around the country, they're going to give you 0.01% interest on those dollars. It's like less than a penny. But what they're doing is they're taking that money in your savings account and they're lending it out to people in the form of a credit card,
Yeah.
auto loan, home loan. And when we talk about a credit card, they're collecting 25% interest on those dollars that you have in your that they're lending out from your savings account.
Hmm.
Okay. So mindset, once again, they're giving you 0.01%, taking your money, lending it out, and then getting back 25%.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So why would I put my money in a place that's going to do something like that long term?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Next part of that, when we talk about saving versus investing, and why we want to make sure that we have 6 months saved up and then move elsewhere.
Right.
Okay. So inflation is the cost of goods and services and the increase in cost of goods and services every single year. Typically, inflation is 3% a year. If we take a look at wages in America, you typically get a raise of 2% a year. So wages, the increase in wages aren't keeping up with the increase of goods and services.
Right.
So how can a middle class American really survive over the years if things are getting more expensive and we're not getting paid more?
Right.
Right, our pay is not keeping up with the cost of goods and services.
Right.
Okay, think about a savings account. And inflation. I'm about to tie these two together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have $5 in your savings account, it's 2015, and you're getting 0.01% interest on that. That's basically nothing. Okay.
Right.
So we go to the grocery store and we buy a loaf of bread in 2015. It's $2.50. We're going to take that $5 from our savings account, buy that loaf of bread. We have $2.50 left. Okay. Thank you. 5 years later, we've had $5 sitting in our savings account for the past 5 years, getting no interest on it. But we go to the grocery store and that loaf of bread is now $4. So we take that same $5 out and we go buy that loaf of bread. Now we have $1 left. Okay. So did we make money or lose money? We lost money.
Yeah.
Right, because we had our money in a vehicle that's not appreciating in asset and is not collecting compound interest.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing for the money over the mattress. Okay, we need our money to be growing,
Mhm.
right? We need our money to be growing and flowing like a river.
Yeah.
Okay, and so once we funded our emergency fund for 6 months, there's no reason for us to continue to put money into a savings account that's not going to do anything for us.
Ooh.
Now we
Ooh. I
need to
just want
start
y'all to hear
investing.
that. there's that after the 6 months in the emergency fund, there isn't that reason to really keep saving. Now I know some folks might be like, well, I need to travel, to travel and the other things that I want to save for. And you can definitely speak to that. But I just wanted to pull that out because I know you were flowing and I want you to flow past it in the river because people need to pick up what you just put down. So yes.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so we need to have our money in asset appreciating vehicles that are going to grow at a rate higher than the and then inflation, which is 3%. And
Right.
typically you're going to get that from investing.
Yep, exactly. What about folks who do say that, right? So let's speak to the devil's advocate of, well, I was taught, the folks that are taught savings the way to go. You have your emergency fund. They're like, yeah, yeah, Michael, I heard of that emergency fund. I know 6 months, ideally a year, whatever the case may be. But then you have this savings for, travel. Like I like to travel. Maybe you're not doing that too much right now, but hey, you're dreaming and you're putting that savings, that money away for travel. You're putting that money away to buy a new car because you can't dip into your emergency fund, right? So, how do you reconcile that the emergency fund is for emergencies? So, you're not supposed to touch it, but there are other things that you want to put aside for, so that you don't quote unquote lose it in investing it because there'll be an ebb and flow to that. How do you reconcile that?
So it's to each his own, really. Some people say 6 months, some people say a year. Some people, Dave Ramsey says, start off with 1,000.
Yes.
Um, at the end of the day, as long as you're saving something and you have the mindset to pay yourself first,
Mhm.
because paying yourself first is saving.
Mhm.
Uh, and then you can kind of pick up the pieces from there. So,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily. I always encourage my people. Yeah, we want to have 6 months of savings, but that's not always an easy task.
It's not.
Right?
Yeah.
So, sometimes it may take you 2 years to save for 6 months
Right.
because you're taking money out and you're doing this, that, and the other. You're going on vacations. You want to invest. Like that's
Right.
okay.
Right.
That's okay. So the
Mm.
bottom line is just to make sure you get to that number eventually.
Right.
Sure you
And
get that
that's
number.
actually go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm also not saying that you have to wait till you get to 6 months of savings before you start investing either.
Yep.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that ideally, what you want to have is 6 months of savings saved, and then you don't have to worry about funding the savings account anymore. Now you can just start putting that money towards investing.
Yeah.
But let's just say if you have a nice round number that you would like to start putting away a month and paying yourself first, maybe half of it goes towards saving and then maybe the other half goes towards investing,
Yeah.
right? That's completely fine. The
Mhm.
biggest thing that we need to start to ingrain in our mindset, my people, is that there is no more or. We're not going to save or invest. We're going to
Right.
save and invest.
Right. I love that. I think that's really important. That's a quotable, right? Of like, don't have a or mindset, have the and mindset. Because even in communication, when I'm working with folks, it's like, well, this is the priority. I'm like, you can have more than one priority, right? And then you work through those. You do. Your kids are a priority. Your well being is a priority. Your spouse is a priority in your marriage. And people be like, oh man, I'm doing this over here and my marriage, but it is a priority. I'm like, yes, all of these things are a priority. You don't have to put yourself on the shelf to
That's right.
make those things a priority. And I'm hearing that similarly with your finances of sitting down and having the conversation of what's important and what's a priority. I think you've saved some people sitting in their living rooms on the couch or at the dining room table having this debate of one who's like, look, I really think we should aggressively invest. And the other one's like, no, we should save. And a lot of times, brother, sister, that's coming from our own mindsets. And I'm saying that from experience of my desire to keep money and to save. Not that saving was a bad thing, but a lot of it was coming from fear of
Right.
not having, fear of
Yeah.
losing, fear of, so that I'm not taking those steps. My husband helped me take purposeful risks, okay, for
Good.
lack of a better phrase. He helped me do that, but that was part of my work. And so you have to be honest with yourself when you're like saver, investor debate. or even saver spender and how to kind of rein that in towards your goals, that you're being honest with yourself, that you're giving yourself that grace, like you said, and that you're not feeling like it has to be one or the other, that how can we do both of these? That's a better and more productive conversation than, hey, let's do it my way. Hey, no, we should do it my way. Hey, I'm gonna do it my way and not tell you, which I've also heard. I've got this over here, but you don't know about it, and that leads to other issues. So we don't want, finances to be this taboo thing that we don't talk about, or that we start getting sneaky about in our marriages. Not for, because that connotes a lack of trust. And I get pushback on this. I've had couples who are like, well, I don't talk to, so and so about the money because da da da. I'm like, at the end of the day, like, do you trust them with the money? They'll be like, no, I trust my spouse. I'm like, do you trust them with the money and the finances? And it starts to come out that there's a lack of security around that. So we need to be transparent. We need to be able to talk with our spouses. It's similar to when you guys see the segment around sex. We need to be able to have those conversations as well. So none of this should be taboo, even though it's deeply personal, our relationships with money and how we deal. So I'm loving this. We need the asset. We need to invest in these, asset.
Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciating vehicles. I was like, you used the phrase, what was it? Yes, asset appreciating vehicles. How does that connect us to, overall wealth and legacy with our children and our family?
So what it does is it gives us the opportunity to again put our money in places that's going to collect compound interest. So here's a quote from Albert Einstein. He said, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those who understand it earn it. Those who don't pay it."
Mm,
Okay,
mm,
so to put that into layman's terms, a credit card is collecting compound interest,
mhm,
right, in the form of debt. So if you have, let's just say we had a credit card with $100 balance on it, and let's just keep the numbers round. You had a 10% interest charge on that. That's an additional $10.
yeah.
Okay, if we had a credit card with $1,000 balance on it, and there's a 10% interest charge on that, that's an additional $100 that we have to pay. So it went from us owing $1,000 to us owing 1,100.
Mm,
Okay,
child.
so those who don't understand it pay it.
Mm,
Now let's go on the flip side and let's take a look at asset appreciating vehicles such as a 401k.
mhm,
We have $100 in a 401k and we get 10% interest return on that. Now we have $110 in our 401k. If we have $1,000 in our 401k and we get a 10% interest return on that, now we have $1,100 on there.
right.
Those who understand it earn it,
Mhm,
right? And so you be the judge. Which one do you want?
mhm. Everybody's gonna pick door number two.
No
We just
brainer.
we just got to get there, and I know for a lot of us, and then I'm definitely gonna kick it to you for whatever you want your last words to be, and how folks can stay connected to you, and all of that, because this is important for us. This is important for us as individuals. This is important for us as folks that are walking this life with somebody else, because we are mindset wise, because of what we've been fed, there is a deficit that we are now working and striving to build upon and grow. And that means that we need to be in a space where we can absorb this information and then put it into action. And that's why my kind of final piece and encouragement is to start where you are, because I know how it can get overwhelming. I know how it can feel like a lot. But what Mike and I are talking about today is like, start where you are and build from that space.
Absolutely.
So wherever
Yes.
you are, start
Yes.
there and start building. So Michael, what kind of last words, nuggets, wisdom do you want to impart to the couples out here?
Pay yourself first. Develop a monthly budget. Start to become financially aware of what's going in and going out. And that's how you start.
Yeah,
That's how
absolutely.
you start.
Right.
Start to become aware of how much money you spend at Chick-fil-A, how much money you spend at Starbucks. Okay.
Mhm.
Then it starts to become an
Starbucks.
yeah. So like, once we do that, then we can start to make a commitment. Like, man, I spent $50 at Starbucks last month. Let me cut that in half and spend $25 at Starbucks, and then put the other 25 into my emergency fund. Or if I have the bread, I spent $50 at Starbucks. Let me go ahead and drop 50 into my savings account, right? So then let's just start to develop those habits.
Right.
Let's start to develop those habits step by step. I always encourage my clients to take baby steps. We're gonna crawl before we walk. We're not
Absolutely.
gonna get out here and jump off on the deep end. And we gotta start at the let's go ahead and start at the kiddie pool. You know what I'm saying? Like when I
Ain't
learned
nothing
how to
wrong with that. Yeah.
you know when I learned how to swim, I didn't jump into the 10-foot pool.
Mhm.
My parents they put me in the 3-foot pool. First I was in the kiddie pool, and then
Mhm.
I was in the 3-foot pool. And then once I learned how to swim, that's when I started diving off the diving board, thinking that I'm doing something. And
Exactly.
I became confident in swimming, and so I didn't need a lifeguard to watch me. Right? Same thing with our finances. Start
Yes.
slow.
Yes, sir.
Start paying yourself $10 a month, $20 a month, and then just gradually increase it.
Right.
And then once you start seeing that money sitting there growing, then you're going to start to like that feeling of just having money. And you're going to start to like the feeling of having money growing everywhere.
Yep.
And then, my sister, we're going to become financially free. And we're going to have a income that we cannot outlive because we
Yes.
will have gained financial security, right?
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes.
so the last thing I want to leave with, if you don't mind, I would like to restate my mission statement.
Yes.
So, my mission is to be a financial educator. I want to create financial independence through expert guidance and accountability. Expert guidance. What that means is I believe that we all have a path that we're going to walk down, and I believe in a higher power that's going to guide us down that path if we follow what that higher power is telling us to do. I'm not gonna get too spiritual or religious because I don't know what the crowd is, but I'm gonna just say that for
Do
me.
you? Yeah.
There's a guiding light that God has for me to walk down. If I follow that path, I'm not saying that I'm God. I'm just saying in general, expert guidance means you have a vision, you have a path that you want to walk down. Okay, let's find out what that path is and let me help you walk down that path. Accountability. If you tell me you got some goals that you want to achieve, then you better damn well believe I'm gonna hold you accountable for you achieving the goals that you want to believe
Mhm.
that you want to achieve. Excuse me.
Mhm.
So, my mission is to be a financial educator. I want to create financial independence through expert guidance and accountability. I want to change the narrative around wealth accumulation, particularly Black wealth, and help 1,000 families achieve a 7-figure net worth and generational wealth.
Yes. You heard it here. Well, I hope y'all, when y'all start filling in stuff for Michael's segment of the Saucy Marriage Weekend Playbook, I know you're going to get some extra nuggets that are really going to pertain to you and what you need to do for your wealth. So let people know I'm going to have all of the links and things here, but how to stay connected with you, Michael. How do they keep the Michael Watson train rolling?
Yeah. So Instagram is Mr. Michael D. Watson. That's my IG, Mr. Michael D. Watson, all one word. Um, Facebook is Michael Watson. Twitter is I think is Michael D. Watson the second. So Michael D. Watson II. I'm gonna have to go back and figure that out. My website is michaelwatson.nm.com. So that's michaelwatson.nm as in Nancy
Mhm.
Mary.com.
Mhm.
And then my cell phone 470-869-1899. 470-869-1899. You can call me, I'll answer. And my
Ooh.
email is michael.watson at nm.com. Michael.watson at nm, NancyMary.com.
Well, I'm gonna have the direct links for you, but I just have to point out that a brother's is serious when he giving you his cell phone number. Don't call this brother if you playing though. You gotta be really in a space of wanting that guidance and that support if you're gonna hit somebody up on their cell phone. But that's for the people right there to say, hey, this is a space where I really want to connect with you. So I thank you so much for being here and lending your
Thank
expertise
you.
and your wisdom.
No, thank you, man. Like this is what we need. You know, this is something that the people need, as far as for marriages, counseling, and just in general. So thank you for the opportunity to come on here and speak to the people, and
Yes.
just for you doing what you're doing, my sister.
Thank you. Yes. So we're keeping the train rolling. Thank you so much, Michael. And I'm going to see you all soon.